Good evening, everyone. Rev Sandy here, and I may be a new face to you. I am the new interim rector at St. Mark's, and I'm here to continue our tradition of reading bedtime stories. It's actually a practice I'm bringing with me from my last church also. And tonight we're going to read a story written by writer Max Lucado, along with his daughters, Jenna and Andrea and Sarah. So Max Lucado, Sarah, Andrea, and Jenna. And it's illustrated by Liz Bonham. And the name of our book tonight is The Crippled Lamb. The Crippled Lamb by Max Lucado. So let's see what our story has in store for us this evening. Once upon a time, in a sunny valley, there lived a little lamb named Joshua. He was white with black spots and black feet, and he had sad eyes. Joshua felt sad when he saw the other lambs with snow-white wool and no spots. And he felt sad when he saw the other sheep with their moms and dads because he didn't have a mom and a dad. And he felt saddest when he saw the other lambs running and jumping because he couldn't. You see, Joshua had been born with one leg that just didn't work right. He was crippled and he limped when he walked. And there's Joshua over here with all the other lambs playing over here. So that's why he always watched while the other lambs ran and played. Joshua felt sad and alone, except when Abigail was around. You see, Abigail was Joshua's best friend. She didn't look quite like a friend for a lamb. She was an old cow. She was brown with white blotches that looked like rain petals on a path. And her belly was round as a barrel, and her voice was always kind and friendly. Some of Josh's favorite hours were spent with his friend Abigail. They loved to pretend that they were on adventures in distant lands. Josh loved to listen to Abigail tell stories about the stars. They would spend hours up on the hill looking into the valley. They were such good friends. But even with a friend like Abigail, Josh still got sad. It made him sad to be the only lamb who couldn't run and jump and play in the grass. And that's when Abigail would turn to him and say, "Don't be sad, little Joshua. God has a special place for those who feel left out." Josh wanted to believe her, but it was hard. Some days he just felt alone. And he really felt alone the day the shepherds decided to take the lambs into the next valley where there was more grass. The sheep had been in this valley for so long that the ground was almost bare. All the sheep were excited when the shepherds told them that they were going to a new meadow. As they prepared to leave, Josh hobbled over and took his place on the edge of the group, but the others started laughing at him. "You're too slow to go all the way to the next valley. Go back, slowpoke. We'll never get there if we have to wait for you. Go back, Joshua." That was very mean. And that's when Joshua looked up and saw the shepherds standing in front of him. "You know, they're right, little Joshua. You'd better go back. This trip is too long for you. Go spend the night in the stable." Joshua looked at the man for a long time, and then he slowly turned and began limping away. When Josh got to the top of the hill, he looked down and saw all the other sheep headed toward the green grass. Never before had he felt so left out. A big tear slipped out of his eye, rolled down his nose, and fell onto a rock. Just then he heard his friend Abigail behind him. And Abigail said what she always said when Josh felt sad. "Don't be sad, little Joshua. God has a special place for those who feel left out." Slowly, the two friends turned and walked back to the stable together. By the time they got to the little barn, the sun was setting like a big orange ball. Josh and Abigail went inside and began to eat some of the hay out of the feed box. They were very hungry, and the hay tasted very good. For a little while, Joshua forgot that he had been left behind. "Go to sleep, little friend," Abigail said after they finished eating. "You've had a hard day." Josh was tired, and so he lay down in the corner on some straw, and he closed his eyes. He felt Abigail lie down beside him, and he was so glad to have Abigail as his good friend. Have you ever had a friend like Abigail? Soon Josh was asleep. At first he slept very soundly, curled up against Abigail's back. In his sleep he dreamed. He dreamed of running and jumping just like the other sheep. He dreamed of long walks with Abigail through the valley. He dreamed of being in a place where he never, ever felt left out. Suddenly, some strange noises woke them up. "Abigail," he whispered, wake up, Abigail, I'm scared." Abigail lifted her big head and looked around. The stable was dark except for a small lamp hanging on the wall. "Somebody's in here," Joshua whispered, and they looked across the dimly lit stable. There, lying on some fresh hay in the feed box, was a baby. A young woman was resting on a big pile of hay beside the feed box. Joshua looked at Abigail, thinking his friend could tell him what was going on, but Abigail was just as surprised as Josh. Josh looked again at the woman, at the child, and then he limped across the stable. He stopped next to the mother and looked into the baby's face. The baby was crying. He was cold. The woman picked up the baby and put him on the hay next to her. Josh looked around the stable for something to keep the baby warm. Usually there were blankets, but there weren't any tonight. The shepherds had taken them on their trip into the valley. Then Josh remembered his own soft, warm wool. Timidly, he walked over and curled up close to the baby. "Oh, thank you, little lamb," the baby's mother said softly. And soon the little child stopped crying and went back to sleep. About that time, a man entered the stable carrying some rags. "I'm sorry, Mary," he said. "This is all the cover I could find." "It's okay," she answered. "This little lamb has kept our new king warm." "A king?" Joshua looked at the baby and wondered who he might be. "His name is Jesus," Mary spoke as if she knew Josh's question. "He's God's son. He came from heaven to teach us about God." Just then there was another noise at the door. It was the shepherds, the ones who had left Joshua behind. Their eyes were big and they were so excited. "We saw a bright light and we heard angels," they began. Then they saw Joshua lying next to the baby. "Joshua, do you know who this baby is?" "He does now," said the young mother. She looked at Joshua and smiled. "God has heard your prayers, little lamb. This little baby is the answer." Joshua learned the surprise before anybody else. Joshua turned and he walked back to his friend Abigail, and he took his place beside his friend. "You were right," he told her. "God does have a special place for me." Do you know that God has a special place for you too? God has a special place for all of us. I hope you enjoyed this story, The Crippled Lamb by Max Lucado. And now I invite you, if you have any prayers that or concerns or joys that you want to write into the chat tonight to be read, then take this time now to do that. And then we'll pray together. I ask your prayers tonight for all of those people who are on our prayer list, that they may find healing on this evening. And all those who are in pain may find relief from their pain. We give thanks for all those people who care for people in hospitals and in care facilities, that they will continue their mission of healing in our world. We thank God for the gifts that have been given to them to do this. And we give our thanks as we prepare toward Christmas this week, and all of the people in our parishes and in our communities who are preparing for Christmas, for our parents, and all that they do. I hope that you are all making cookies at home and getting ready to spend time with your families. We're praying for Mary in hospice and for her husband, Al, tonight. And pray for David and for his family. Healing for Beth, Barbara, and Carol. We give thanksgiving that we've got some snow on the ground for Christmas. Makes it feel just a little bit more like Christmas here. And let's take a moment to pray together in the words that Jesus taught us. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. God bless you on this night, and I look forward to seeing you next Tuesday when we read the book together, The Three Wise Women. Take care.